Yeah, I'll tell you if it works.
It's not one.
Yeah, I'll tell you if it works.
Hi everyone.
We
are now apparently live. So we are here Monday, the 3rd of April 2023, and we're going to be talking about pensions.
So we need to mute ourselves.
Yes, that was me doing a double take by the looks of things. But we are here live, as you can tell, without the editing, talking about SSAS pensions. So Bronwyn, why don't you take us away and introduce the session to everyone that's watching. You're on mute as well, Bronwyn.
Hi everybody. This is Bronwyn Verncombe. This is a slightly different expert panel, property expert panel this month, because we have a guest appearance with Kevin Whelan. Now, normally we have Ross and we have Teresa and Tim, but because we decided that this month we would focus on the budget changes and particularly around pensions, that's why we've brought our expert in, Kevin, because in the past we've had quite a few questions around SSAS pensions, small self-administered scheme pensions. And it's been really tricky for me to answer those, or for us as a panel to answer them, because we have to put our hands up and say we're not, we're not experts. We may have SSAS pensions, but we're not experts ourselves. So we decided a few months ago that we really ought to have somebody come and join us. And Kevin luckily texted me the other day and said, I really could come and update everybody on the budget. So here we are. With relatively short notice, we are able to record this as well, so those that can't join us can listen in. So Kevin Whelan is the founder of Wealth Builders, and Wealth Builders now has not only an academy for wealth creation, but also has an academy for SSAS pensions too. And Kevin and I go back probably 7-8 years now since I started my property journey. And Kevin and various connections has really helped me on my journey to financial freedom. So I'm so excited that he can be here tonight and present to us. So why don't we just have a quick sort of round robin? Simon, the two Simons can introduce themselves. I'll introduce myself, and then we'll go straight into Kevin, and Kevin can share his screen. We've got some questions in advance, so Simon can host those and check the chat box as well, so you can ask questions as we go forward. So Simon Mizevich, thank you for joining and being my host for today. Carry on.
Good evening, and it's always a pleasure, as always, Bronwyn. So thank you for inviting me to host this event. So my name is Simon Mizevich. I am a property tax specialist as well as an international property tax specialist. My focus is always about providing you with the latest tax updates. And so tonight we're going to be focusing clearly on SSAS pensions. So I won't go into the tax updates because that really would be misplaced of me to do so. So I shall let that go to the expert, Kevin Whelan. From my side of things, the budget update, what really changed? Not much really, it was pretty boring. The key change that you should be aware of is corporation tax changes. Everyone may be happy and used to the fact that you pay 19% corporation tax up to £50,000, but now there is an effective tax rate of 26.5% between £50,000 and £250,000. But then after that, it doesn't really get too much better, to 25% on profits in excess of £250,000. So that's really the update in terms of the budget. There's a few other things, of course, but nothing to talk about in terms of the world of property. So with that, I shall pass you on to my esteemed colleague, Simon Hodgson.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. For those who maybe haven't been on the webinars before, my name is Simon Hodgson. I run Funded Specialist Finance. So we specialise in mortgages for investors. So that covers everything from single lets, HMOs, large blocks of flats, big HMOs. and yeah, effectively taking out SSAS lending once you've used your SSAS pension possibly to buy a project and turn it into something else. Yeah, I've been investing in property over 20 years. I started learning from a guy called Russ Whitney, who was an American. First came over here, I think, 98, 99. And Simon Zucci did his first learnings with Russ Whitney as well, funnily enough. Yeah, and it became very clear that once you had a little bit of knowledge, most brokers kind of glazed over and didn't really understand how an investor worked compared to their normal clients. So that's really why I do mortgages, and hopefully I'm here to be able to answer a few questions on funding and where the banks are right at the moment, because there's an awful lot going on behind the scenes with the banks. Perhaps not as bad as we think it is, although there are some worrying signs in certain places which could be worse than we think it is. Anyway, that's enough for me. I think it's probably best to hear from the main star of tonight.
Well, thanks for the
Go
introduction.
for it, Kevin.
When you talked about some trouble behind the scenes, Simon, with banks. When Swiss banks go bust, something's afoot. There's some crazy things going, and I think one of the benefits, and there's maybe a sub benefit, I don't know if any questions will come out from that, but one of the things I love most about the kind of wider topic of SSAS is it's be your own bank. You're using your own money to fund your own projects or to work closely in association with good brokers as well who understand SSAS. So you can stack your money in different ways. So using pensions to bring money to the table today is much better than putting your money in the long term for the future. So I guess that just kind of responds to that point. So yeah, good mortgage broker and your own pensions can work together.
Indeed. So, I think before we start to share the screens, I think it'll be useful to know, if we can, those that can put in the chat box who that's here live already has a SSAS pension of their own. It would be really good for you to just say yes into the chat box, because that would be really useful to know. So I've had mine for 6 years, something like that. Simon, you've got a SSAS. Which Simon? Both of you? No? Okay, so Simon Mizovic, you don't.
No.
Oh my goodness. So
No.
Ross, who I think is a bit late, he's got a SSAS, as does Tim, our legal expert who's normally with us. So quite a few of us do. And therefore we can share I can certainly share some of my stories around why it's been useful for me. But I think if Kevin can share his screen, maybe we start off with a bit of an update as to what's happening, and start off with what is a SSAS, maybe would be a good place.
Permission to do that, then I'll just grab that and just start there. Let me know if that works okay. So
yeah, that's good.
I'll just really focus on the basics, right? Because the language, like any language, whether it's tax language, property language, mortgage broking language, you have to learn some new language on your journey to wealth. And probably the language that I've learned in the hard way is the small self-administered scheme. Kind of a quirky bit of language, that, isn't it? It really is just a tax-free trust fund. It's a pension, but it's a tax-free trust fund. So no income tax, no corporation tax, no capital gains tax, no inheritance tax, no national insurance, all of those things. So when you can build something up that grows entirely free of tax, it's got to be good for your wealth. And that's why I like that concept of a trust fund. And a trust fund means it's ring-fenced, so it's protected, it's held separately from any business, and as a result of that, it means you can also protect money you're building as well as diversifying, which I'll come on to. Only available to limited company owners, by the way. So it doesn't work for an LLP, doesn't work for self-employed, doesn't work for employed people. So if you've got a limited company, you can essentially get your limited company to apply to give you and as many as 11 people. Not quite a football team, although I'm a mad Newcastle United fan. 2-0 against Man United the other night. I was very happy about that. Anyway, should keep football and politics out of everything, shouldn't I, really? But anyway, up to 11, which means husband and wives, easy. 2, husband, wife, grown-up kids, easy. Business partners working together, very simple to pool. And instead of paddling a single canoe, most pensions are for one person, you can pool money, collaborate. And if you pool money, you've got more bang for your buck, especially around property, because you can negotiate and you've got bigger deposits, so you can work well with your mortgage brokers. The second point is, or the third point rather, is income now. See, when you think about pensions, almost everybody is disconnected with the concept of pension, because it's, well, I've got to pay money now, but it's locked away till I'm in my 50s or my 60s. Not in SSAS. SSAS can let you buy assets now, and you can also lend money to your own company, which means you can use money, essentially lend it to yourself in reality, so you can acquire assets and build income in your personal and business life now. So you don't have to wait till the nest egg cracks open when you're 65. You can access that money today. And it's hugely popular for property people. Why? Well, we know with Section 24 and lots of other stealthy ways governments get involved, they've been picking on landlords now for a little while. And as a result of that, there's been a proliferation of property owners taking up limited companies, which means they become eligible for SSAS. And because of that, then we've seen so many people like Bronwyn, like Tim, like myself and others, who are using pension funds previously consigned to a kind of stock market roller coaster, now using that to acquire, own, and hold various types of property. So, Bronwyn, I hope that gives a kind of an opening introduction to the concept of SSAS. Does that work for you?
Yeah, that's great. Can I just ask Simon to send me the link that will take us to the live? If you can put it in the chat box for me, Simon, that would be useful, and then I'll send it to the people that are struggling. But yeah, Kevin, that's great. That's really a simple way of explaining that, and people can ask questions direct once they get in. So I think maybe just can we just pause for 1 minute? Simon, can you just tell us, are you getting people live? Are you seeing people live?
There are 50, 60 people, 64 people live.
Perfect. Okay. So in which case we will just carry on, and behind the scenes, I'll just send the link to some of the people.
John and Ian have said that they had a link that wasn't working. So we had one video that was meant to be going live. Zoom wouldn't work, so we've had to redo that and go through to Zoom backend. So apologies, guys, if you're listening in. Technology does fool us from time to time, but you know, we are on track and we are answering your questions.
Brilliant, brilliant. So I'll let you continue, Kevin. Apologies for that.
Thank you, Bronwyn. And yeah, well, we get interventions that are welcomed and unwelcome from time to time, and technology might well be one of those. But of course, we've got a rather smug-looking chancellor as well, and too many of them in the last year, hasn't there? Really, it's been a bit of a nightmare since the kamikaze. Oh, I said politics again. I don't need to do that. Anyway, so what have the government been having a go at with the stealth taxes? Well, we know landlords are a plum target right now. We've seen Section 24. We're going to be seeing EPCs and the cost of EPCs, and probably many more things to follow. And you know, one of the things that I just like is sometimes, you know, there are some good news for us landlords, and one of those is the concept of the SSAS. And I suppose as far as the lifetime allowance is concerned, which is this ceiling on value, where those tax reliefs that I mentioned, that income tax-free, corporation tax-free, capital gains tax-free, and inheritance tax-free, get called into question once you get above a certain limit. And the government have tinkered with that over the years, a bit of a, I suppose, a political hot potato or a political football, whatever analogy works for you. Now, it used to be that you had an unlimited pot, and then they dropped it to 1.8 million, and then 1.5, and then 1.2. And then surprising to me in the budget, they went for unlimited again. They just completely abolished the lifetime allowance. Bronwyn, I've had to go and write some chapters in my book, which I don't like very much because it's a pain in the hoo-ha to go back and write all these things about how you can protect yourself from the lifetime allowance. However, more of that later, because will it stay? Don't know about that one. That's politics again. But the other thing is they were a bit sneaky because there are, if you think about the pension rules now being unlimited, used to be just over 1 million. So let's say you really go for it and you maximize your contributions, which are now 60,000, not 40,000 per person, right? So lots of scope to do that. But the tax-free cash was always 25%. So if you built up a £2 million pot, you'd think, great, $500,000 tax-free. No, they kind of restricted it to £268,265. Why on earth did they do that? I think somebody said, we don't want to give them all that cash completely tax-free. Let's just limit it to 25% of 1.073 million, which is what they've done. However, if you're one of the fortunate few and you've got a protected pension, because interestingly enough, and I'll mention this later, when governments change rules on pensions, every time they've changed, at least so far, they've signposted that and they put in transitional arrangements. So they don't make it retrospective, so far anyway, which means if you've got the protection, you have got your higher tax-free cash. So if you've got a 1.8 million lifetime allowance locked in with a certificate, then you've got 25% of that, not the 268. Anyhow, Simon's spot on about corporation tax. And of course, I've just been very simplistic with the 25p in the pound headline rate for profits over 250. But one of the big benefits of SSAS, bearing in mind it's a corporate pension, is the company can pay in. Now, here's a little known fact. If you're a business owner and a director, chances are you don't pay yourself very much in salary. You take most of it out in some other way, like dividends and so on. Well, if you wanted to make a personal pension contribution, then it's limited to your salary. So if it's 12 grand a year you pay and you wanted to pay 60 grand into your pension, you couldn't because you're only paying 12. But if the company makes the contribution for you, then it's the full 60,000. Now that's a 50% increase on where it was before, which is massive. And if you can get that at 25p tax deduction, then you're getting 15 grand back in taxes. Well, that's not a bad thing to do, I don't think anyway. And then I always get questions about, now I'm getting a bit excited about pensions now. Can I actually carry, well, they call it carry back, but it's not, it's called carry forward. You can basically make the maximum this year, then go back 3, 2, 1 and carry it all up. But it's not 60, 60, 60, 60. It's 60 in the current year, or at least it will be in 3 days' time. So wait till then. And then you can go back 3, 2, 1, 120 plus 60 is 180. And that's your maximum in the current plan. So lots of scope to build up a sizable fund if you want to. Now, some people can't put as much in as that, and we call those restrictions, and they normally apply when you've done something or you earn something. Well, if you've drawn money out of your pension, not the cash, but you've actually tapped into income, then you can't actually put in 60. It's to prevent the recycling of your money and going back and getting more tax relief, more tax relief, more tax relief. They limited that, and it's currently £4,000 per year. It's now next year going up to 10, which means for some people might be worth thinking about again. The other thing to bear in mind is those paying additional rate, those over now 260,000 a year, then they're limited as well. There's called a taper relief. It's a tax restriction about your contributions, and that's gone from 4 to 10. So I think we'll probably see some bigger earners making contributions this year. So maybe if you're affected by any of these things, have a conversation with someone you trust and maybe kind of review that again. So who are the key winners? You can tell I'm a football fan, but the key winners, and one they wanted to protect, the doctors. They wanted those doctors, those high-earning doctors with the biggest final salary pensions, to stay in the NHS and not to leave. And as a result of that, this increasing allowance has meant they can continue to benefit from pensions, whereas the old rules basically froze them out. And they were saying, why the hell would I stay? I'm going to end up paying a tax charge for growing my pension just by staying another year. So that's been a good thing. The other thing I'd say is we've got at least 2 years worth of planning here, because if Labour do get in, and let's say they get in Jan 25 and they act quickly, they won't be able to enact anything legally till April 25. So we've got 2 full years of planning anyway. And those of you in that sort of middle income or decent income, but still, if you're employed between that 100 and 125 grand a year, then you've got that marginal tax of 60p in the pound because you're losing your personal allowance. Well, here's a way to get it back. Make a healthy pension contribution, either personally or through salary sacrifice, which is just a way of negotiating a deal with your employer, and you get 60p in the pound back and get your salary back to 100 grand. And then you get all of that money back and possibly even negotiate getting the employer's NI chucked into the mix as well. That's more about negotiation than anything else. And do bear in mind, as I've mentioned before, that a SSAS is multi-member, which means even if the lifetime allowance comes back, it's always a lifetime allowance per person. So if you've got a husband and wife and say 3 grown-up kids, say my situation, you've actually got £5 million worth of lifetime allowance, assuming the lifetime allowance was £1 million. So you've got scope to be able to shift your tax-free money in your tax-free family trust fund between members of your family. And bear in mind, you'll never pay inheritance tax on that money as well. So a really great family legacy plan. Best family legacy plan I've seen in 30 years of getting involved. Yes, it's 30 years. I know I don't look old enough, but 30 years later, I still think it's the best thing I've ever seen. Now, will the government change it? Well, the knee-jerk reaction at the time was wrong people at the wrong time. You focused on the wrong things. Well, maybe so, maybe not. You can decide on that. Will they reverse it? Maybe not. Maybe they'll go for another target. We don't really know about that. But never been retrospective so far. So they always, if they put in a new limit, they have to protect the people who are already there. They can't penalize people who've already, who didn't know what was coming, if you see what I mean. So I'd be optimistic about that. And remember, even if it does come back, you've still got your family members you can use your £1 million allowance for, or whatever the lifetime allowance is. And it's crazy to let a political tail wag a dog, or even a tax tail wag a dog. You just need to be the dog and be in control of your own destiny and plan with what you see. Don't get worried about what you can't control. I think that's true in life, isn't it? And if you want any information from me, you're welcome. And of course, well, I'm here to answer questions, but there's some free resources that I'll be delighted to make available to you. All you really need to do is scan the code or click on the link, and perhaps Bronwyn, you can put the link into the chat box if the chat box is working. But if not, no worries. Hope that
Simon can do that.
Okay, thank you. Hope that was a useful trot around the kind of change in budget and the lifetime allowance and why kind of SSAS might be, a good thing for people to be thinking about right now.
Yes, now it's not straightforward. So some of us with SSASs sort of can keep up with what you're talking about, but some of our audience are perhaps, maybe still in the corporate world, maybe just starting out on their entrepreneurship, whatever that might be, probably property. I think we're starting to talk about lifetime allowances and £1 million, and very large numbers here. But the reason that they're large numbers is because some of us have been able to take a corporate pension, perhaps even a defined benefit scheme that we've paid into over 20 years. in my situation. And the value of that, if I'm going to transfer that into my own SaaS, is huge, and it's very large, and it's a very scary thing because suddenly you become responsible for that. But there's lots of rules and regulations that you need to learn, that you can learn, and there's lots of people to support you. So that's why when we're talking about numbers like that, that isn't the contributions we've made as an entrepreneur, although they could be. They can be meant, multiple pensions that you might want to pull together and get the value of bringing those into one scheme that you can then have control of within regulations and rules.
I mean, it's interesting you talk about things are scary. I'll tell you what scares me more. The fact that most people sleepwalk with their retirement funds. They give their money to an expert who charges them typically 2% of their pot. When the money goes up, they get paid. If the money goes down, they get paid. If the money stays the same, they get paid. To me, it's like being in the Matrix. If you remember the movie The Matrix, it's like somebody stuck a siphon in your money and just charges you, and you don't know what you're getting. You're spectating, not participating. And while it might feel comfortable, I'd be more scared by that, because when you get to retirement, if you're an employee and you get to retirement with a pot, you don't know how big the pot is. Then all of a sudden, you've got a nest egg of money and you've got to start living off that nest egg when you haven't learned any skills of managing money, managing property, managing anything. So I think anybody who wants to be wealthy in retirement needs to be in business managing money. And that scariness goes away if you take small steps, learn small things, take small actions, and find people who know what they're doing, who you believe you can trust them to guide you, not to do it for you, but to guide you. And because in many respects, the SaaS is a mirror image of you. So your SaaS, Bronwyn, reflects who you are. My SaaS reflects who I am. Tim reflects who Tim is. It's not making him be something different. It's saying, hey, if you love property, you can do that. If you love gold, you can do that. If you love the stock market but just want to buy wholesale, you can do that. If you want to buy cryptocurrency, you can do that. It's not for me to say, what can somebody do? It's what are you willing to learn, get education on, and then the more you know, the less risk you end up taking.
I'm going to interject if I may, because I think it's good to get the audience involved. I've been doing a few polls whilst you guys have been talking. So I did a poll of, do you have a SaaS pension? And incredibly, 82% said no. 18% said yes. So there's a lot of difference there. I also did another poll, which 9 people have voted. Where's the rest of you? Come on, guys, it's meant to be interactive. Don't be passive, be active. Okay, there you go. So if you haven't voted, do so. But not at all, in terms of likelihood of getting a SaaS pension is just 10%. Not likely is a third, which is interesting. Likely is 36%, and will be setting one up is 27%. So lots of people are still sitting on the fence. So let's see if we can convert those. But let's get some questions.
It's about knowledge, isn't it? Yeah, it is about knowledge. And we've got some great questions in advance already. I just want to touch very briefly on why did I make the decision? Because it took me 2 years, Kevin, didn't it? It took me, I was umming and ahhing. I used to borrow from other people, SIPs and SASs, because there's an opportunity. And I never did it myself for 2 years. And the turning point for me was headspace, education, understanding and realizing that it wasn't as scary. But more than that, my family now has this potential. It's a business. It's my money. I can invest it. I can get return on it. And my family can continue that legacy into the future. Whereas my Lloyds Bank pension, my husband would have got 50% of it if I died before him, and the kids get nothing. Yeah. And for me, that was a no-brainer. My goodness, all that money that I've earned and all that hard work disappears. Okay, just like that. So, just to explain that, I think it's a very personal thing, and you don't do it lightly. And there are plenty of rules. So if you already have a business, if you've got a limited company and it's trading, that's the first place to start. Because if you haven't got that, that's not.
And you're already following rules, whether it's Article 4, whether it's mortgage lending rules. I mean, business is about rules. And talking about the risk, and one of my family members, not an immediate family member, but someone on my wife's side, she was a teacher, 61 years of age, who paid in since she was 22. She had a daughter, 19, but it was adopted daughter, didn't have a husband. She died at 61. 40 years of pension gone. Zero value there. So
amazing.
There's risks everywhere, okay? So I'm not saying what's right, what's wrong. I'm not trying to even convince, I certainly don't want to convince, that doing a SSAS, like doing property, is not right for everyone, isn't. But just understanding choices, I think, is important, so you make an informed choice either way. So, you know, I'm comfortable sharing what I know about the difference between conventional pensions, final salaries, SIPs, SSAS, you know, all of that, really.
Yeah. So Simon, are you happy to proceed? Because I think Adam's question would be quite a good one to start with.
Well, there's quite a few questions that I've got coming through, so I've kind of paused. There's a lot of confusion, Kevin, around about SSAS needs to be in a trade company.
Okay.
And I think the confusion is around, is it trade as in active, or is it trade as in it's not buy-to-let property investing, because investing is not trade. Can you clarify what trade really means and what is really a requirement here?
Yeah, so from a revenue point of view, trading means there's activity going through the business. The other value, of course, in any form of activity that's involving a property, if you're paying corporation tax on it, it's a trading entity. So it's not personal income, it's not investment income, which would be ineligible for pension contributions, for example, his own personally. So if you've got a limited company and you've got activity going through that, to which you'd be attracting the potential for corporation tax, then you can create a SSAS around that. And of course, anybody who does buy-to-let might learn something new along the way about doing something different, whether it's serviced accommodation or apart hotels, or it might be supported living, or it might be a flip, or it might be something where there's a combination of development work as well as income from activity. So please, let's solve the confusion. If you're likely to pay corporation tax, then SSAS would be something to put on the agenda to understand.
Perfect. And I'm just going to go to some of the questions that have been said before. So yes, you're right, Bronwyn, about Adam's question. Here we go with that. I'd love to be given a very simple overview of SSAS and know if I can convert my normal pension into SSAS, so I can so I have a seed funding to start buy, refurb, refinance, rent property business. Kevin, just on that, before you answer that, when we talk about normal pension, obviously there's different types of pensions, so it's worth talking about what types, like even SIPs, can you convert those into SSAS? So take it away, Kevin.
Yeah, so that, like, love is in the eye of the beholder, so is normal pension, right? So what the hell is a normal pension? Well, Bronwyn was talking about final salary, that's normal, but more complex to move those, but can be moved. Not if it's in public service. So if you're a doctor or a dentist, you work for the blue lights, you can't move those pensions. Any conventional pension in the stakeholder pension, personal pension, workplace pension potentially, and SIPs, and there's a world of difference between SIP and SSAS if we want to get into some of the differences there. But the whole point is any pension can be moved into SSAS, but you can start a SSAS with no pension. You can just be making good profit and you want to shelter some of the profits and put that into a SSAS yourself. So we've created SSASs for people with no pensions. They just made the decision that they're making good profit now and they want to protect and shelter some of those profits in a tax-free way while still providing that capital that they may need for their property business along the way.
Excellent. That's nice and easy. Let's go to someone else. Brad was asking, how long does it take to get a SSAS set up roughly?
Roughly 4 months.
There you go.
And that's to do with HMRC because they've got some eligibility criteria. But once you go through that process, then it's about 4 months from start to finish typically.
Someone else asked a question here, and it's come up live as well. Sue asks, what is the benefit of transferring from a SIP to a SAS?
Well, okay, let's touch on how long have we got. So I could probably do 10, but I'll do 3. Right? The first thing is a SIP is a personal pension, so somebody else controls the pension. So somebody else tells you what you can do. So can you lend your money to your company? No. Could you buy gold? No. Could you lend money to a third party? No. So you're restricted by somebody else's rules. That's the first thing with the SIP. It's self-invested personal pension, but it's a bit of a misnomer because the name on the logo, whoever's ever sending you the statement, they're the true boss. They're the ones in charge. That's you make all the decisions. You have somebody else to help you execute those decisions and report those decisions, just like an accountant or a bookkeeper working for a limited company, but you are in control. Number 2, a SIP is almost always for one person and one person only. A SAS, you can combine that money. So the pooling of money can make the journey of what you want to buy much more powerful. Not least because with a SAS, if you imagine you pooled 4 people together, all with 100,000, you now got 400,000, you've got buying power of 400,000. And if you speak to a good mortgage broker like Simon, he can get you 50% leverage. So you've now got 600,000. You got 600,000 worth of buying power when in a SIP you'd only have 150. What else? If you want to do something like a commercial to residential conversion, can't do that in a SIP because you can't have any linkage to residential property at all. I said I'd give you 3. There's 3. I could keep going if you wanted me to.
No, that's all good. I'm not quickly answering questions. I'm going to just finish that poll off that I started earlier. So it's how likely are you to invest in a SAS? And 6% say not at all. 25% now it's dropped to not likely. Likely is 45%. So you're doing the convincing job. We'll be setting one up is now at 24%. Now let's see if we can get some higher numbers on that. Let's get to the next question. A bit a longer one. John asks, in a limited company, trading, say flipping properties, can pay for the next fiscal year, assuming unused £60,000 annual pension contribution allowance into an owner's SAS or SIP, presumably too. Assuming that the net profits are, say, 70,000, paying 60,000 would be possible, leaving £10,000 of profits to be taxed. But what if the profits before tax was £50,000, let's say? Could a contribution of 60,000 still be paid, making a loss? And someone else answered that as well. So do you want to see if it is of...
Yeah, you can do that. I mean, the whole principle behind corporation tax relief for pension contributions is the wholly necessary and exclusively test. You have to be genuinely trying to do the best for the business. And if you make a pension contribution to serve the director and the business goes into a loss, or some businesses can do that. Nothing wrong with that. If you've got a healthy cash balance, for example, then you can certainly do that. There's no problem with doing that at all.
Let's get to Xiaoming's asked the question. Just make sure that, yeah, that's a good question to ask. Xiaoming said, my husband and I are trustees of our SAS pension. So she must be one of the percentages that's got one because she's now alive. My husband now is lacking of mental capacity. I have both LPAs for his life and finance. However, the SAS provider told me that my LPAs cannot be used for my husband because he is a trustee of the SAS. I have to get a trustee power of attorney in order to make my investment decisions on behalf of our SAS. Is that correct? If so, where to make a trustee power of attorney for a SAS?
Well, that's more of a legal question than it is a SAS question. But like any form of legal instruments, when somebody's either losing capacity or has lost capacity, you're going to have to create some legal documentation. I'm not a lawyer, so Tim probably would have been better placed to give answer to that comment. However, I've heard some trustees are perfectly willing to accept a lasting power of attorney. And some trustees want a business power of attorney from the company. So I think it's just a question of asking your own trustee. But this is a question that I'm taking up on behalf of Jiaming because she's asked me the question already and separately. And I understand, therefore, she must be in some concern. And I want to get to the bottom of that for her. So I'll come back to her separately, but it is a legal issue. It's not really about, that would be the same in a SIP or a SAS. There's always complexity, albeit probably couldn't have a SIP with her husband. It'd be more likely to be a SAS anyway.
Yeah, it's quite complex, isn't it, when you're talking about that level of detail? But, you know, these sorts of questions are really helpful to people because they can now preempt that by checking, because, you know, when you set a SAS up, you must have a trustee company. Okay, so you're not the only trustee. There is another trustee, and the company themselves, that can vary, and some of their rules and regulations are different, aren't they, Kevin?
Yeah,
so,
in the same way as mortgage companies are.
Yeah.
Right, Simon? You know, you talk to one mortgage company with a buy-to-let and somebody with a limited company where they've got freezer shares or other shares. You're going to have different rules, different regulations, different approaches. That's just normal in the course of business. That's why somebody who knows what they're doing will get to the bottom of that for you, which is why having good experts is what life is all about, really.
So I'm going to ask a different question, if it's okay, because there's something that's come up. And this is from Ingrid. So someone who doesn't have a limited company and they still think that a SAS pension is quite good. Let's say that they've got properties in their own name. Can they somehow get involved in a SAS pension?
Only if they create a limited company.
Right. So they need a trade company of some sort and do something with it, basically.
Yeah, and that happens a lot. I mean, it happens because historically people have bought property in their personal name, and there's a whole raft of different advisors and guidance around that, isn't there, Simon? From personal ownership to LLP and limited company and smart companies and other companies and hybrid companies and so on. There's bound to be some complexity about that, but that's again where the expertise comes in. But the revenue will not allow a SAS for anyone running an LLP or a partnership. It's a company pension scheme, basically. So it has to be set up by a limited company. Well, how long does it take to set up a limited company? Well, you could have one set up tomorrow, but you need some activity in it. So I would say 3 to 6 months worth of activity is probably then, but in 3 to 6 months, you could probably learn what you need. Even smart people like Bronwyn took 2 years, right? So 3 to 6 months, you could probably learn something.
Yeah. And you can be investigating your current pensions.
Yeah.
You know, if you've got more than one, you need to get the paperwork out and dust it off and go, yeah, what did it say about transfer? You know, is it eligible? You know, even if you are, you know, in the Navy or whatever, still go look at it, because there are some exceptions, aren't there? I think.
Well, and also there's, you know, there's a big number out there of money floating around the pension ether, and it's just over 20 billion. Right? That's not 20 million. That's not 20 grand. That's 20 billion. That's the amount of money that people have lost and forgotten, which is floating around, profiting the insurance companies and the exchequer who get paid, you know, from the profits, and nobody's matching it back to the rightful owners. So if you think you worked for a company or you had a pension and it was an old insurance company, they've gone bust, you know, you can trace all that stuff. So there's a pension tracing agency, a .gov site can help you do that. 20 billion, you know, maybe there's a little treasure chest waiting to be discovered. Not an Easter hunt, but a pension hunt.
So
that would be good.
The questions that come through actually is about the NHS pension. Now, to be fair, I was doing a lot of the IFA work through St James's Place a long time ago, but the one thing that they hated was touching anything to do with NHS pensions because of the such wranglings around the pensions. Do you advise differently at all, Kevin, in terms of the NHS pensions? Or would you say
you can't anyway? I mean, all of these blue light pensions from, I think it was 2015, if I recall it, it was banned from 2015. And the reality is, you know, whether it's good, bad for anybody, it isn't for me to say, but the government banned it because in reality, it's an unfunded scheme. All that money that's going to pay the retirees in the public sector, their pension, or the taxpayers in the future. So It's our kids who are going to pay that tax bill. So that's why they stopped allowing that money to be paid out, because there simply is no pot there to pay out.
That's good. It's a fair point. So you may ask the question, if I'm not mistaken, you need a limited company to sponsor the establishment of your SSAS, which I think we've covered off already. However, your SSAS can survive it independently, even if the sponsoring company should subsequently be closed down. I've not come across that before.
Yeah, and that's normal. Well, if you think about it, if you've got a limited company, and then you create a nice tax-free trust fund from healthy profits, and then you sell your company, you don't want that to somehow have a knock-on effect that's negative to the pension. So whether the pension can survive, it's ring-fenced and protected from litigation, from tax, and from creditors. So nothing can damage that. The only thing that can damage a SSAS, by the way, is divorce, because nothing is protected from that, but everything else is protected. So if the company sells, goes bust, whatever, then those pension assets remain locked inside the trust fund for the trustees to do whatever they want to do. There's no restriction on that at all, other than the technicality, as whereas with a trading company, you can lend 50% of the value to the limited company. If there's no limited company, you can't lend the 50% to anybody. But you can create another limited company tomorrow and then attach that to the SSAS instead. You just create a new limited company. It's really difficult. Yeah.
I do have to interject on something that so Ian's slightly differently to the subject matter, but I have to kind of answer it. Ian said, my accountant advised to have a partnership for 2 years between personal investment and a limited company to basically hiving off the profits for best tax position. Some way to go yet. Don't do that. HMRC have already won in court about the hybrid tax structure, whereby using this artificial partnership structure and a limited company. So that was February 2020, I believe it was. And to be fair, the guys who was promoting this, I'm not going to mention their name for legal reasons, but you will know who they are if I said less tax. I'll leave it at that. Okay, so don't do that. In whatever you do, your accountant is sending you down a rat run of legal wranglings, to say the least. I want to go with JB's question. I feel sorry for his situation. I just want to get your views on this, Kevin. How can I get my pensions out of the stock market if I don't have a company yet? I thought I could invest in gold, other properties with a SIP, but you're just no to gold. I spoke with my 2 IFAs who have been no help whatsoever and have been very condescending about me wanting to get out of the stock market. Of course, they are charging you fees for having money in management, despite the value of my DC pension dropping by 5k. What you have to remember about any wealth managers who's got your money under what their strategy is, that they charge you a commission of 2, 3, 4, 5% of whatever money you got invested, no matter the performance. So of course they're going to belittle what you do. But I mean, from that perspective, I mean, that's the reason why we create these types of pensions, isn't it, Kevin, to have control over your own destiny.
Yeah, I mean, look, the stock market is an interesting asset class to own. So it's a diversifier, it's liquid. So it is possible to reduce the cost of that by perhaps looking at exchange traded funds or tracker funds. Most people in the UK are in active funds, and there's literally no evidence that active fund managers, after charges, outperform the market. So the one thing to do is just drop your costs down. And certainly when we look at that, we often see overcharging by about 50%. So you can, when in an environment where cost of living is going up, you can definitely drop your fees by a lot. You don't have to have an advisor if you don't want one. Certainly, I've never seen anybody have 2. You're paying 2 people there. It doesn't seem logical, really, to do that. But getting a limited company will allow you to invest in other things. And some SIPs, in any event, some SIPs will allow some diversification into things like crowdfunding. Some SIPs will allow gold. It's just a case of shopping around to decide what investment you want to hold. And if anybody wants to know how to do that research, I'll be more than happy to help. So you're not stuck. That's the thing. So nobody's stuck. You've always got the option, but more often than not, if the advisors are like turkeys not voting for Christmas, you're not going to get the impartial view that you perhaps maybe need.
I want to get Simon Hodgson involved in this, because SSAS pensions typically, can they get mortgages? Because I understand that they can enter something to get finance. Is that possible, Simon? Have you done anything like that?
Absolutely. As Kevin loosely alluded to earlier on, and as he was introducing himself, up to 50% loan to value within the SSAS. It's generally the high streets. So you're looking at NatWest, Lloyds, Barclays are the main sort of players that will do that. But there are a few challenger banks as well that will do it. So Cambridge and Counties, Redwood will lend into that kind of structure. So you can get some leverage. So that would typically be within the SSAS itself, a commercial property. Outside the SSAS, I guess we haven't really touched upon loan back, have we?
No, not yet.
But that has come a question already about, can you give us a bit of an appraisal of that loan back situation, Kevin, from your SSAS to yourself? What's the repayment method that needs to be adhered to, and the term?
Well, Simon, you carry on with the, assuming I've explained you can get 50%. So if you've got 400,000, you can lend to your limited company 200. Now, if they've got that 200 in the company, how would they work with you to be able to do that? So that's not inside the SSAS. That's now outside of the SSAS.
Yes, that's now within the company. Yes, that then relatively free of restriction to get lending. So it's just normal lender restrictions. So depending on what you're buying, if you're going to get creative with it, if we can find something where you can add some value before you purchase, potentially we can get some 100% funding in places and use the leftover SSAS funds for the refurbishment. So effectively, you've got no money going in of your own. It's all coming from a SSAS. If it's a more standardised property, generally 75% loans to value on the asset would be okay. I'm assuming, Kevin, in terms of restrictions on loan back, we haven't got a first charge, have we? Have we got a first charge?
Well, that depends. This is an important question. You okay if I go into that one? Yeah. So in terms of the loan back, so let me repeat, SSAS is the only pension scheme that allows the loan to be made to the sponsoring employer, so which is your limited company. So that's why your limited company needs to be trading in what you're doing. So you need the SIC codes that reflect what you're going to do with the money. So let's assume that's fine. You've got a property company, you make a loan to your property company. Then the loan, number one, has got to go to the company. So it's not to yourself as in personal. It's not like a director's loan. It's a loan to the company. Number two, the loan has got to be repaid over a 5-year term. Number three, it's a repayment mortgage. It's not an interest-only mortgage. It's not a mortgage in the sense that it's a commercial lender. It's the Inland Revenue granting approval for this in standard rules. Number four, the interest rate is prescribed, at least as a minimum, which is no less than 1% over base. So whatever base rate is +1. And then the loan must be secured by way of a first legal charge. Now, that doesn't mean on the property you're buying, but it could be. It could be on another asset. It could be on a debenture on a company. It could be on another asset you don't even own. So, but in some cases, we've got, for example, 3 family members working together with, say, £1 million, and £500,000 is being loaned for a loan back, and that money's buying properties outright. So you see what I mean by the pooling? The pooling means you're not borrowing any money from the bank. Now, while that doesn't satisfy the mortgage turkey who wants to be paid, nonetheless, if they do that, then they'll refinance out and then do the mortgage to pay the money back. So the whole thing creates a very elegant circle, keeping the money within your life under your control. So there's a real value in that. So the maths are always going to be different, but there's the principle, Simon, of the loan back facility. And it's probably the most popular thing our SAS trustees do, is because when do they want the money? I want it now.
Kevin, there was an element of people saying about your book and getting reference to that. Could you drop a link into the Zoom chat so that I can paste it over?
No, because I haven't written it yet.
It's not finished. It's not finished. You can have mine.
I'll let you know
I'll
let you know when it's finished. That particular pension book is called, I think the working title is Retirement Dream or Pension Nightmare. What are you going to wake up to? Because most people simply have no clue what's going on in their pensions, outside of their pensions is just a joke. And the only real profit maker is the industry itself. And I want to shine a light on the 7 layers of hidden charges that most people would get very cross if they understood them, but they're not well disclosed. So I'm going to shine a light on that, but that's in rewrite. It'll be out soon.
Bronwyn, yes. I want to add you in, but just before I do, I'm just doing another poll, which again, 25 voters. Come on, where's the rest of you guys? It'd be really nice to have that voted now. So, will you invest in property in 2023? I just thought I'd see where the conditioning is. 92% said yes, only 8% said no. So I'll keep an eye on that. But guys, if you can vote, that'd be great. The more active you are, the more you'll take on. So Bronwyn, if you just shared your book, brilliant. So one of the questions that came out, Bronwyn, is can you give us an example of a use of a SAS pension, maybe from a property development perspective?
Can I share my screen? Because I've actually got a slide on this.
Please go.
Or not. So let me just share my screen. Go to here. Let's put this up. Okay, so here's an example, if you can see that all right. Here's an example of how I used loan back. This is a commercial property. I could have bought it in my SAS, but actually this was where I want to be quite creative with my finance. So I wanted to get planning permission on this, and I wanted to build some houses along this road here. We bought this unconditionally, so quite risky from a development point of view. Now, from a loan back, I had 5 years, okay, as Kevin explained, 5 years at one of the cheapest possible ways of borrowing money, and it's under my control. So I could take a loan back, I could buy this to a point with some investors, okay, and then I was free to go do other things. Now, obviously, I needed security for the loan back, but the development, once I got planning, the development, I could get separate funding for, and that's what I did. So this is the development. Those are now built out, these 8 houses. I split the title then, and the SAS now owns phase 2, interestingly, as a commercial property, giving me lots of choices. These are the finished products. That's the street view. So that's a good example of a little bit of creativity and using the loan back. I have borrowed from other people's SIPs and SSASs. So as a SAS owner or a SIP owner, you can lend to other people for projects and get a return on that from as a loan situation. And that's how I grew my business in the first couple of years, was using other people's SIPs and SSASs. That's a really good one for when you're starting out, but you've actually got knowledge, you've got experience, and you might want to then borrow from other people to actually do projects along those lines.
It's a great point, and I call it being SAS savvy. That there'll be some people in the room who perhaps wouldn't do a SAS, and that's absolutely fine. There's no requirement for anybody to do a SAS. But to understand that there will be people who might want to do that, because by converting their pension and then becoming a bank themselves, then they can make loans to third parties. It's not the same as lending back to yourself. There's no restriction there. So you could turn yourself into a banker, and you could lend money if your inclination is to be a bank and to take a charge and get an interest rate on that. So Or you could be an inward receiver of somebody else who's got a SaaS, and you could do a joint venture. You could do a lend and learn type environment. There's so many different ways that creativity and connectivity can come into play in a way you can't do that with the poor guy with his money stuck on the stock market. There's no plug and play connections to anybody other than the advisor or two advisors. But with the SaaS, you've just got more flexibility to go in as many different directions as you want. And you could have done that deal any number of different ways, Bronwyn. With whether you did the loan back, you could have just bought the thing outright and done it that way, and did the split title when you got to do the development into the residential. So you can use SaaS in many ways. You're not going to become a SaaS expert in an hour or an hour and a half or whatever. But I think the only thing I ask people to do is just become curious about it and go, like you said, with your Navy pension or whatever, just go find out, find out from somebody, and somebody who knows what they're talking about. And then once you found out, you can, take some time. It doesn't have to be quick. Nobody's in a rush here. And just take as long as you need to decide, hey, it's an interesting thing. Is it for me? And if it isn't for you, at least you know. And then, so what are you going to do instead? You're going to put it back on the stock market and pay those fees, or just have a super low cost pension and use that as a diversifier and never have a SaaS? That's perfectly fine as well.
Yeah.
Shall we?
Any other questions? Yeah.
That's it for questions. Shall we kind of continue with what Kevin was talking about, just to get into the any content of how people might get involved and contact you?
What, in terms of Kevin's details?
Yeah.
It's on that. It was on that final slide, wasn't it? I think.
Yeah. Do you want to copy and paste it and put it into this chat, Kevin? And then that way I can put it through the YouTube so that people can contact you via
your
link.
contact. Yeah, your contact details.
That'll be awesome.
Yeah, the other one was the knowledge, was the link to Wealth Builders, where there's quite a lot of information in that link, where you can just go look and learn. Yeah, that's
right. I think we just I'll get to the slide in a minute, but I think we just called it wealthbuilders.co.uk/PIF, which is Property Investing Foundation. So just do that. I'll find the slide momentarily, but anyway, wealthbuilders.co.uk, or find me on LinkedIn or whatever, and just ask some questions. And we give information freely and willingly, and we know it takes people a long time to make up their mind about what's right and wrong, because there's lots to look at. So we're absolutely, there's no hurry, there's no rush, because this is a long-term retirement venture anyway.
Yeah. I think there were some other questions, weren't there, that were not SaaS related, Simon? Do you want me to?
I've been kicking those off. To be fair, I'm kicking them off as in answering them. Not just.
Oh, you have. Oh, perfect.
So
great.
I've been doing those.
Okay,
but
good.
there was one from John, actually, who's been a great active participant, and thank you, John, for really helping me out by answering some of the questions. So we'll have to get you on the panel at this.
Yes.
It's been very quick draw McGraw on the keyboard, I would say. So he's asked a question, actually, saying the loan back can be renewed once after 5 years. So I guess the loan back, paying it back, how long do you have to wait, Kevin, before you do it again?
No, there's no time limit. We've got lots of people, going back to the story I told you about the three brothers. They'll do a loan back, which will be ostensibly over 5 years, but then they'll pay it back in 1 year and do another one, and pay it back in 1 year and do another one, pay it back in 1 year and do another one. Okay. And you can extend it for a further 5 years, although you need to go through the motions of doing that. So
it sounds like if you're paying it back, you can do another one quickly.
Yeah, you can. There's no waiting period. It just comes down to how much money you've got in the pot.
Yeah. Guys, if you've got any further questions, we're kind of dropping off in terms of the questions now, but if you have got any final questions, then feel free to drop those in. But it looks quite an active group, so thank you ever so much for your time and your energy to put into this. And thank you to the panel members as well. Anything to conclude, Bronwyn, before we finish off? Because I think the guys are
Yeah, were there any questions, Simon Hodgson, that you were asked in advance before the live event that we had? I know there was Dale asking a couple of about using other people's money. When I tried, I couldn't make it work. He had 3 people interested, but he needed a bridge, and one of the lenders was a SSAS. They needed some form of security. Yeah, complicated, isn't it? Yeah, that it was making your security go round when you've got multiple lenders, including a SSAS, and that is difficult for good reason, really.
Yeah. I think, Kevin, you were saying that we can use a debenture as opposed to a fixed charge, can we not? Which would then allow the bridging lender to have the first charge, which is what ultimately their funding line will be demanding. So there are ways around it, actually. Look, there we go. Look, creative online finance solutions. Boom, I think is the word.
Boom. Okay,
Boom
brilliant.
A boom zoom in the room.
Okay, brilliant.
There's a couple of questions, if I can, because they have just been firing in, so I must have just given them a bit of an injection there. So let's get these questions on.
Call to action.
No, well, let's keep on going. So Sheila Patel says, Kevin mentioned that you have up to 11 people in a SSAS, but is that with just one limited company, or can you have more?
Well, you can have more than one SSAS per limited company, but no more than 11 members in any one scheme.
Okay.
Right. So if you had a big enough company, so you had 33 people in your company, you could have 3 SSASs for the same company. But there'd be 3 separate arrangements. The reason why it's 11 and not 12, as soon as you get to 12, you get to sort of big company regulation, which is much more onerous in reporting, and you're getting into the same sort of stature as multinational companies and so on. So it's just this less than 12 number gives us all this freedom, this creativity and flexibility, which is why it's perfect for small business owners, property entrepreneurs, anybody who's got the willingness and desire to make profit and to shelter profit, or to access that profit, getting the tax back and access the profit, reinvest, make more money, do it again. And it's just a way to keep money circulating inside your life, as opposed to it going out to lenders and to brokers and to different people, no disrespect intended. But in the end, the money does come back, and you can leverage as much or as little as you want. Just another
quite often you'll have a husband and wife, won't you, where they're both members, they could both bring their pensions in, so you've got you pooling money, which is a big asset. You can then bring in, once your children are 18, you can bring your children into it. Now there'll have to be some contributions in, won't there? And I think it's not as simple as just bringing them in and paying them, but it then can really become a family business. Yeah.
And we run for kids, we run something called a simulator, which allows the younger people to pretend as if they were a member of the scheme. And you say, okay, little Johnny, imagine you had 10 grand and you had to make a proposal to the family like Dragon's Den to make an investment. What would you do? And get them to do some research, whether it's stock market or crowdfunding or property or whatever it would be. And you can almost begin to teach through the safety of a virtual account inside a SSAS. And for sure, when you think about legacy for the next generation, because there's no inheritance tax to pay, now the lifetime allowance is gone, at least for now, then you can leave an unlimited pot for the next generation and they'll never pay a penny in inheritance tax. And if you were to die before the age of 75, that's current rules anyway, all of that money is free of income tax as well. So, they can take all the money out completely free of tax. No inheritance tax, no income tax, no tax. So I know we all want to survive beyond 75, but we haven't seen the rules come out yet specifically about that. Now the lifetime allowance is gone.
Just a quick question to panel or not panel members, everyone that's been watching this video. If you've enjoyed it, let's please show your appreciation by hitting that like button on the video, because that tells YouTube that it's a good video, good content, and other people would watch it and get involved. So please do hit that like button, smash it, jump on it, do whatever you like to do with it. Just make sure you press it. Kevin, there was a question that was relating to that Sushila comment about companies, and she said, thanks Kevin, what I meant was, can you have more than one limited company in the same SaaS?
Yes, yes you can. So let's say you've got a trading company, you've got an IT consultancy business and a property business. You can attach them both, technical term, deed of adherence, but you attach one company to sponsor, one company adhered, and now you can do a loan back, not in one direction, but two directions. Still maximum of 50%, you smart people. It's not 50% one way, 50% the other. It's a maximum 50%. But yeah, deed of adherence, and you can attach as many companies as you want. So that's a nice, easy way to bolt on a little property deal to a company that perhaps is doing things other than property.
Good question.
That's a good one.
Perfect. I think we're done with the questions, to be fair. I know there's a couple of people and other things, but I think that's it for the night. I think that's quite good. Quite
fantastic.
Good. Awesome.
Awesome. And apologies for if there were any link problems earlier, but you know, we're all having fun here, and we do this in our own time. We don't get paid for it. We enjoy it. We love to add value to all of you coming on live. And then of course the recording is available as well in YouTube. So yeah, we're always adding value, aren't we? So thank you so much for joining us. We've enjoyed being here, and you've got all our contact details again in the details within YouTube, so you can connect with any one of us for any other questions that you might have. We'll do our best. Okay, anything else anyone wants to add before we say cheerio? Nice and early.
No, thank you.
No, thank you very much. The next one we will inform you probably after the coronation. Do you think? After the coronation, sometime after May. So thank you very much, everybody, for joining, and thank you, Kevin, for coming as our guest today. It's a lot of value added.
I appreciate it.
Okay. Cheerio, guys.
Take care. Cheers.